couple weeks ago, we had the very first Nintendo Direct in about 9 months, and it sucked. At least for me, it felt like there were no announcements that really caught my eye. The Ocarina of Time remake I'm extremely excited for, but just about everyone already knew that was happening. Thanks, leakers. So even that announcement just felt more disappointing since I was at least expecting to see some gameplay, especially since it comes out in less than 6 months. The biggest surprise in that Direct though was the almost complete lack of Super Mario. The most he got in that entire presentation were his overalls appearing as a costume in the Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC. There were no new Mario game announcements or updates to Mario games that are already on Switch 2. Now I don't want to get too much into Switch 2 discourse, but the lack of any Mario certainly didn't help the growing concerns of Switch 2's somewhat mediocre lineup. I mean, I've played Tomodachi Life longer than all of my other Switch 2 games combined, and that's a Switch 1 title. But the reason the lack of Mario announcements was a bit surprising is because of Mario Kart World. This is currently the biggest game on the Switch 2, and over a year after its launch, there has been no word about this game getting an update. I still think it'll happen eventually, it's just bizarre that Nintendo is waiting this long to add DLC for their multiplayer game, but are adding a ton to Donkey Kong Bonanza. Maybe they're just really hesitant to do DLC for major Mario titles though, because another game that I and many others wanted DLC for was Super Mario Odyssey. It did get a couple updates, but nothing like a brand new kingdom or anything. As I was thinking about how weird it is that Nintendo refuses to give these games DLC, I thought of a pretty fun video idea. Since I'm still a believer that Mario Kart World will get DLC in the future, what if some of the DLC tracks came from Super Mario Odyssey? The Mario Kart series has made tracks based on specific mainline locations before, the most prominent in my mind being Tick Tock Clock, which is based on the location of the same name in Mario 64. So today, I thought it'd be fun to rank all of the kingdoms in Super Mario Odyssey, not based on how much I like them, but based on how cool I think their setting would be as a track in Mario Kart World. My criteria for this will come down to how unique the location is and how well I think that can be adapted into a kart racing setting. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Are you guys ready for the least surprising last place of all time? 15, the Cloud Kingdom. This kingdom can't do anything right. It is by far the worst kingdom in Mario Odyssey, and that in large part comes from its incredibly lackluster aesthetic. As the name suggests, the theme for this kingdom is just Cloud. And I mean just Cloud, as there is basically nothing else here. Other sky levels across the mainline Mario series are usually pretty colorful, but the Cloud Kingdom is just a super boring white blob. In terms of Mario Kart as well, we've already had a couple Cloud tracks that are far more interesting than anything I can imagine coming from Cloud Kingdom. Cloudtop Cruise is one of my favorite Mario Kart 8 Nitro courses, and it does a lot more with the sky theme by including an airship, vine block, and even thunder clouds. Not you. Even earlier in the Mario Kart series, we got Sky Garden, and despite being from the GBA, I still think it has a more interesting look than Mario Odyssey's Cloud Kingdom. If we are going to get a cloud-based track, I would much rather it be one of these two making a comeback. Not to mention, we already have a sky track in Mario Kart World with Great Question Block Ruin, which again looks much more interesting than anything Cloud Kingdom can do. On top of just a super boring aesthetic, there's nothing here that would really make it a clear tie-in to Odyssey. Heck, there's not even music in this kingdom that can be referenced. I think it's safe to say that this would be the absolute worst choice for an Odyssey track. 14, the Mushroom Kingdom. This one is a bit harder to place since it's not really much of an Odyssey location. I mean, obviously it's in Mario Odyssey, but it's also in nearly every other Mario game. That pretty much includes Mario Kart as well, as it already has a track based around Peach's castle, which is the main focal point of the Mushroom Kingdom. It would be pretty weird to have multiple tracks based around Peach's castle, but it also wouldn't be a first for the Mario Kart series either. I mean, Mario Kart 8 had 2 different Peach's castle tracks at launch, so if they really wanted to, they could make a Mushroom Kingdom track. That said, I would obviously much rather have a unique location, especially since the Mushroom Kingdom in Odyssey is meant as a callback kingdom to previous Mario games, which I thought was really cool, but obviously not great representation of Odyssey itself. Speaking of that callback angle though, one area of the kingdom that I always liked was the castle courtyard. Not only is this an infamous location because of the
L is real,
but I love the look of this place being ripped straight from Mario 64. So that gave me an idea. What if they make an entire Mario Kart track with a retro art style? I think it would be fun having a track that looks like it's ripped straight from the N64 era right next to some of the more modern stuff. So that could be a fun approach if they wanted to make a second Peach's Castle track, just have it be Mario 64ified. Obviously though, that would be much more of a Mario 64 reference than an Odyssey reference, so even if I think a track like that could be fun, I'm keeping the Mushroom Kingdom low on this list. Alright, I think those are the two main kingdoms that I'd be more disappointed to see. Now we can move on to the levels that have much stronger ties to Odyssey itself. 13. Shiveria.
Why so mediocre?
This is still one of my lesser favorite kingdoms in Odyssey, and that's largely thanks to the aesthetic. All things considered, it's a pretty generic snow stage, which both the mainline Mario series and Mario Kart have plenty of. Just looking at Mario Kart World, we already have DK Pass, which yes, is different from Snow Kingdom, but not so much where I feel like they need to both exist. Then from previous Mario Kart games, we also have goated tracks like Mount Wario or DK Summit, which I would much rather see come back than getting a Snow Kingdom course. With that said, there are certainly some things that could make a Shiveria course interesting. The heart of the kingdom is actually underground, which could give this a somewhat unique spin compared to some of the other snow tracks. There have been a few, like Rosalina's Ice World and the Sherbert Lands, that have icy caverns, but none that have been fully underground. Plus, the Snow Kingdom in Odyssey is the racing kingdom, as several moons require Mario to capture a Shiverian and take part in the Bound Bowl. If we did get a Snow Kingdom track, I think the Shiverians would act as perfect obstacles, as they could be bouncing around all over the place. This is also our first kingdom to have unique NPCs, and I think they play a big part in adding some character to the tracks. The Shiverians are probably some of my favorite NPCs too, so I'd be pretty happy to see them again. I definitely think there are more iconic Odyssey locations to choose from, but the Snow Kingdom certainly has some room to work with in Mario Kart. 12. New Donk City. This is easily Mario Odyssey's most iconic location and one of my favorite kingdoms in the game.
We do not need another city track.
I am absolutely over the city theme in Mario Kart games. Due to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's DLC being based on Mario Kart Tour, we got a ton of cities back to back. It also didn't help that a lot of them were pretty mediocre design-wise. There is not a single soul out there saying Los Angeles Laps is their favorite Mario Kart track. Even in Mario Kart World, we already have Crown City to represent this aesthetic, and that's again one of my lesser-liked tracks in the game. So as much as I love New Donk City in Odyssey, I don't think its visual design would be all that special in Mario Kart. It also doesn't help that New Donk City is already the main thing other games reference from Odyssey. The Odyssey stage in Smash's New Donk City, it appeared in Mario Golf, and it even made a cameo in one of the latest Switch 2 games, which I won't name for spoiler reasons.
I don't think it's that hard to guess.
So I think another kingdom should get a chance to shine here. The reason I have New Donk City above what we have so far is just because it is very iconic, and it would be fun to see all of the realistic humans walking around, especially compared to the Toads, Yoshis, and Shy Guys that walk around the rest of the open world. If any kingdom is going to have a track named after them, it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being New Donk City. But seeing as TikTok Clock of all maps was the one to get a track from 64, I think there's still hope for some of the more obscure courses. 11. Lake Lamode.
Okay, major problem. You can't go underwater in Mario Kart World.
So how would we make this kingdom even work in Mario Kart World? Not to mention that if we could make it work, how would we make it interesting? In my opinion, most underwater Mario Kart tracks are pretty lame and mediocre. Piranha Plant Cove is probably the best majority underwater track, and even that one is just about average quality wise. So what do I think they could do for Lake Kingdom? Well, just because underwater driving is not in Mario Kart World, that doesn't mean we can't drive underwater. If we take a look at Mario Kart Wii, one of its most popular tracks was Koopa Cape. Despite this game coming before the introduction of underwater driving, there is a section of the course that takes place below the water. You would just drive through a clear pipe, which not only worked from a mechanical standpoint, but also just looked really cool. I think a similar thing could absolutely be done for the Lake Kingdom. In Mario Odyssey, a lot of the course is filled with these reverse fishbowl areas that Mario can walk around and breathe in. So a Mario Kart track could use those as a central focal point. Maybe the track would begin up on the surface of the kingdom before spending a majority of the race driving through these clear fishbowls underwater. This would be totally unique from any other track in Mario Kart World, and I think it could look really beautiful if they fill the water with a ton of Cheep Cheeps, Lock Ladies, Urchins, and this freak from New Super Mario Bros. With all that said, Lake Lamode is not one of the first kingdoms I really think about when Odyssey comes to mind. In terms of being a water level, it's definitely one of the Mario series' best, but it is still a water level at the end of the day. I've spent a lot more time in pretty much every other kingdom, so while I think there is potential for a cool course using the fish bowls, I'd definitely rather get some of the other kingdoms first. 10. Bubbling. And here we have our other water level, though this one would take much less effort to get working. Compared to Lake, a lot more time is spent on the surface of this kingdom enjoying the beach, which would work very well with Mario Kart World's water driving mechanics. Unfortunately, the Mario Kart devs already thought about how good a beach setting would work with their new mechanics. Both Koopa Troopa Beach and Peach Beach already exist, not to mention a ton of seaside intermissions in the open world. However, it is worth noting that both Koopa Troopa Beach and Peach Beach suck. So maybe the devs could use Bubbling as an excuse to make an actually good beach map. I think they could really spice the track up by adding in some interesting obstacles. The other two beach tracks don't really have any in the water itself, but if Bubbling was added, I think filling the course with gushions would make the water segments far more interesting. If they wanted to, they could even have the track get more intense as the laps go on, thanks to the kingdom's boss, that guy. Unlike most other boss fights in Odyssey, his fight takes place across the entire kingdom, so making him an essential element of the track could be pretty interesting. On lap 1, he would stay at the top drinking the sparkling water. Then on lap 2, he would start shooting out shells, just like he does after collecting a few moons in Mario Odyssey. Finally on lap 3, he would jump down into the course itself, spinning through the track and maybe slowing down the players up front. I sort of think of it like a seaside version of Grumble Volcano, which also becomes more chaotic as the race goes on. I think that could end up being pretty fun, and would make this one of the most interesting maps where you drive on water. The reason this is still pretty low on the list though, is because the beach aesthetic is a bit overused, and water driving is not really my favorite mechanic. But who knows, maybe all it needs is a good course to utilize it. 9. Fossil Falls. This is definitely one of Odyssey's most memorable kingdoms. It's where you collect your first Power Moon, and of course, it's the first place where you get to use the iconic T-Rex capture. If this were to become a track, it's pretty obvious that the T-Rex would be a perfect obstacle. Yeah, unfortunately, Mario Kart World already has a dinosaur track with Dino Dino Jungle. Unlike the beach tracks I mentioned earlier, Dino Dino Jungle is actually good. Now, despite both being dinosaur-centric, there are plenty of differences between their aesthetics. Fossil Falls is much more natural, and it of course has a giant waterfall as its focal point. Dino Dino Jungle in World is a lot closer to Jurassic Park, but without the violence. I don't think they wanted to do that to Wario. So these two tracks could coexist, but I still think it would feel like a bit of overlap, especially with how little tracks Mario Kart World has. They could absolutely adapt this into a beautiful course, especially with the waterfall, but I just think there are a few better options. 8. Steam Gardens. This course hurts me. If you were to ask me before Mario Kart World came out which Odyssey Kingdom I would want to see as a track the most, Steam Gardens would have easily taken the #1 spot. Not only is it my favorite kingdom in Mario Odyssey, but the aesthetic is just so good. The steampunk look mixed with the overgrown forest is just so much fun and very distinct from any other Mario level or track in Mario Kart. Dandelion Depths in Mario Kart World is clearly at least inspired by the Wooded Kingdom from Mario Odyssey. The steampunk part of its design is captured very prominently throughout this course. It also makes sense for Steam Gardens to get a Mario Kart track, seeing as it is probably the fan favorite level from Mario Odyssey. But the issue is, they didn't really go all the way here. Sure, it's got the steampunk part down, but that's about it. There's definitely a lot of nature in this track, but instead of being an overgrown forest, it's more of an underground cavern. I guess you could say this part is similar in concept to the Deep Woods and Steam Gardens, but that's a very loose connection. This course also doesn't feature any of the Steam Garden set pieces. There are no uproots or even Steam Gardeners. Instead, this is a Biddy Bud track now. Huh? It makes it feel like they wanted to reference Odyssey, but weren't allowed to go all the way with it for some reason. Recently, it's been a big talking point in the Mario community how Nintendo refuses to add any Mario Odyssey characters into other Mario games. Besides Pauline, the other characters have mostly been stuck to just Odyssey itself. Oh, the binoculars made it too, I guess. So Dandelion Depths feels almost like a confirmation that Nintendo is avoiding Odyssey characters rather than this being a good tribute to one of its most iconic courses. I would love for them to actually make a Steam Gardens course, but I think with Dandelion Depths existing now, that possibility is a lot lower. 7. Bowser's Kingdom. Every single Mario Kart game has their own Bowser's Castle track. Someone should really make a video about that. Mario Kart World is of course no exception, having what might be the most popular rendition of the track. With that being said, the look and feel of the Mario Kart Bowser castles are a lot different than the Odyssey Bowser castle. Mario Kart usually bases theirs on the 2D Bowser castles, with a lot of lava and difficult obstacles. Odyssey's on the other hand completely forgoes the lava look and instead takes on a Japanese-inspired appearance. That makes the course much more colorful than other Bowser castle tracks, especially with the multicolored clouds surrounding it. This also takes place high up in the sky, which is similar to Mario Kart World's Bowser Castle, but different from every other appearance of this track theme. What also helps is the fact that there are so many course elements that could fit pretty well into Mario Kart World. The bombs could easily fill the course as obstacles to drive past. I'm sort of thinking they'd be like the barrels in DK Spaceport. The stair-face ogres could also line certain parts of the track to crush people. I think putting them next to dash panels, item boxes, or shortcuts could add some pretty strong risk-reward scenarios. I also think it would be cute if the Pokio could make some sort of appearance here, especially since they're some of my favorite captures. Finally, I think it would be really interesting if we could use the spark pylons connecting each island in Odyssey as rails to grind on here. Maybe this could even be the first track that requires rail grinding to get between sections, which would fit with the difficulty of the Bowser track. So overall, I think a track for this kingdom would be really cool. The only thing holding this back is just the fact that it's not my absolute favorite kingdom in the base game. I still really like it, it just has some pretty fierce competition. 6. Toast Arena. This is another pretty big and iconic kingdom from Odyssey, which I think was cemented even more after the Galaxy movie, seeing as it appears pretty prominently there. At least I think it did. I didn't watch it. Anyway, this is another one of my favorite kingdoms in Mario Odyssey, so of course I would love to see it be adapted into Mario Kart. There are actually quite a few ways they could go about it, as this is the biggest kingdom in the entire game. Obviously, they would want to base it around one or more of the kingdom's main set pieces. Otherwise, we would just have another sand track, and I don't know if I have it in me to do that again. I feel like the most likely thing that they'd do would be focusing the track on the Toast Arena town itself, which is a very vibrant and very different location than any other Mario Kart desert track. I would love to see the Toasterinians make an appearance too. They'd honestly make for pretty good playable characters. If added to Mario Kart though, they definitely have to expand the town, but I think that's more than possible. I'm thinking of something sort of like Delfino Square from Mario Kart DS. Alternatively, they could also base the course around the ruins or the floating pyramid. This would be a little closer to some of the other Mario Kart desert tracks, but I think it could still be unique because of the floating aspect. Maybe you'd start the course inside the normal ruins, and then about halfway through, you'd take a cannon up to the pyramid and have to make it back down for the end of the lap. There's definitely some potential there, even if it does lean into the fairly common desert ruins trope. My final idea is that they could play into the icy underground by having us switch between the surface and cold portions as we race. Maybe the surface portion could have us drive through the town, and the underground portion could represent the ruins through the Knucklo-Tech boss arena. Heck, he could even show up as an obstacle by either punching through the track or having icicles rain down. There are just a ton of options for a Toast Arena track, so I'd be thrilled to see basically any of them. It's really only being held back because Mario Kart World already has a ton of desert tracks. Toast Arena would be quite different from those deserts, but it would still be a desert. 5. The Moon. If you're wondering why this video only has 15 entries despite Odyssey having 17 kingdoms, I decided to combine the dark and darker side with the regular Moon Kingdom. For the sake of this list, there's really no reason to separate them. Anyway, beside the Rainbow Road tracks, we haven't really gotten any Mario Kart courses that take place in space. Maybe it's to keep the Rainbow Roads feeling special, but I don't think making a track on the moon would really take away from that. At absolute worst, it might make this one section in Mario Kart 7's Rainbow Road slightly less interesting. Now with all of that said, I was originally gonna place the Moon Kingdom a little lower down. The aesthetic is just the moon after all, and even if it is unique for Mario Kart, it's still not the most interesting to look at in my opinion. Plus, if they did a track on the moon, they might not even tie it into Odyssey at all, seeing as that game didn't invent the moon. That was Majora's Mask.
Hello.
However, I decided to move this higher up when I remembered about the moon's core. Spoilers for Mario Odyssey if you're for some reason watching this without playing the game, but the final sequence has you capture Bowser himself and escape through the moon's collapsing core. I think recreating this journey in a Mario Kart track could potentially end up being one of the series' best courses. In my mind, this would be a section track starting with a simple drive on the moon. This would also feature lower gravity, which is pretty rare to see in Mario Kart, but not completely unheard of. Then Section 2 would focus on the wedding hall. They'd have to expand it from the Odyssey design, but I think they could definitely get something out of driving around and inside the structure. Finally, Section 3 would have the difficulty really ramp up as you have to drive through the collapsing core. Meteors and pillars would fall all around the course, keeping the racers on their toes up until the very end. Then, I think ending the course on a cannon shot into space, just like the spark pylon at the end of the escape sequence, would be very cool. If they made a Moon Kingdom track like this, I would absolutely love it. However, if they just did the surface of the moon, I think I'd find that a bit less interesting. That one is also definitely the more likely outcome, so that's why I'm keeping the Moon Kingdom lower down on the list. I would still like a moon-based track, but a more Odyssey-centric one would be a lot better. 4. Forgotten Isle. The Lost Kingdom is probably my favorite mid-sized kingdom in the entire game, and that large part comes from its aesthetic. I love the purple hue of the entire island, especially with the poison lining the course. Despite how common purple poison is in the Mario series as well, there surprisingly hasn't been a Mario Kart course that utilizes it. Compared to other options like the new Super Mario Bros. Jungles, I think Lost Kingdom would be a much more interesting choice. Honestly, I don't really have a ton of special gameplay in mind for this one, I just think the aesthetic alone is enough to carry it high on the list. Maybe the tropical wigglers could be fun to avoid, and the spinning platforms could work similar to many of the moving parts in Tick-Tock Clock. Really though, it's the aesthetic that I want to see in Mario Kart. I think this would be an absolutely lovely track theme to race through. 3. Cap Kingdom. This is the very first kingdom in the game, which would normally mean it's got a very generic aesthetic, but that is 100% not the case here. The black and white look of the kingdom is completely different from anything in both Mario Kart and the mainline Mario series.
Shut up.
I have loved the Bonneton aesthetic ever since I first played Odyssey, and I think it could act as a great representation for the game as a whole. Obviously, caps are very centric to the gameplay, so the Cap Kingdom represents that part quite well. I mean, it is the hometown of Cappy himself, so it's a very important location to the game. The only real problem with Cap Kingdom is its lack of really unique obstacles. While the aesthetic is very different, it does still have an incredibly simple layout to go with being the game's first course. I mean, you wouldn't want to start anyone out in a level as complicated as Rainbow Ride or something.
In this video, we can see a player so atrociously bad at Mario that he almost gets himself killed multiple times a second.
The most unique elements I can think of is maybe its fog effect. Now, in a Mario Kart game, I could see this potentially being very annoying, but if done right, this could help make the track feel a bit more special. Maybe some of the shortcuts could be obscured by a thick fog throughout the course, making them a little bit harder to take. I also think having certain areas with lower visibility could be pretty unique, though fun is another question. Generally, I don't like when games limit my vision for an extended period of time, so if they do it in a Cap Kingdom track, it would have to be during brief moments and not the full course. So overall, while Cap doesn't have a ton of unique obstacles, it does have a totally unique aesthetic from anything else across the Mario series. It's so distinct and important to Odyssey that it would make complete sense as its first Mario Kart track.
You don't count.
2. Luncheon Kingdom. Here we have our final large kingdom of the list, and of the bunch, I think it's the best fit for a Mario Kart track. First off, aesthetically, it is extremely unique. Sure, we have had a couple food tracks in Mario Kart, and heck, we have Sky High Sundae in Mario Kart World, but none have a similar look to this. The food here is both very colorful and oddly polygonal. Despite all of the food being based on real-world food, it's still pretty obvious that it's from the Luncheon Kingdom just by looking at it. This is also Mario Odyssey's lava course, and it's safe to say that it's pretty different from any other lava course in Mario Kart. The pink liquid really helps to set it apart, and I think it could even be worked well into the track's design. Lava in Mario Kart World actually got completely overhauled from previous Mario Kart titles. Now, instead of completely melting the second you touch the lava, you can actually drive on top of it for a second before sinking. This can allow you to course correct without falling off, or you can even use an item to open up some shortcut opportunities. Seeing as lava is currently only present in Bowser's Castle and Dry Bones Burnout, adding a third course to showcase this mechanic would be pretty nice. As for the general layout, I see a Luncheon Kingdom track being very vertical as we try and climb Mount Vobono. Maybe we start the race inside the town and have to wrap around the volcano in order to climb it. As we make our way up, we'd have to avoid several rolling pieces of food along with lava bubbles hopping out of the pink lava. It would also be really funny if we could use Volbonin stuck into the wall as platforms to jump with. Then, once we make it up to the very top, it would be fun if we had to cross the giant pot of stew by carefully hopping between different food items floating inside. Maybe as the race goes on, Cookatiel could also make an appearance here where she would flap her wings to push racers around. And finally, the lap would end with all the racers having to drop down from the top of the volcano back into the town. So overall, I think there is a lot of potential for a Luncheon Kingdom track. It's got a very obvious idea for a track layout and several unique obstacles that would fit well into the setting of Mario Kart. It also helps that it's one of my favorite kingdoms in the game, so I would be more than happy to see it chosen as a track for Mario Kart World's DLC.
1. Ruined Kingdom. This kingdom has way too much aura to be left behind in the state it's seen in Mario Odyssey.
Like Cloud Kingdom from all the way at the start of the list, Ruined Kingdom is a mini kingdom. It's essentially just a glorified boss arena for the Ruined Dragon, but unlike Cloud, it actually has an insanely cool theme. The stormy atmosphere mixed with the purple ruins gives Crumbledon a much more ominous vibe compared to any other level in the Mario series. That includes Mario Kart as well, so I think this aesthetic would be a perfect fit for a very difficult track. Really, I just want to see some Mario game utilize this aesthetic to the fullest, since Mario Odyssey only briefly explored it. The track would have to have a mostly original layout, since the course in Odyssey didn't give us a lot to work with, but I think that would honestly be a bit more exciting. I imagine the layout would take inspiration from some of the intermissions leading up to Airship Fortress, where the road is constantly broken up with several parts you can trick off of. I also think the track should take inspiration from Cloudtop Cruise's Stormy segment by having purple lightning strike down on the track. They could place them in even more devious spots this time, like maybe above item boxes or even jumps leading to a shortcut. And of course, no Ruined Kingdom track would be complete without the Ruined Dragon himself making an appearance. My two ideas are to either have just one section of the track focused on driving around the dragon plus its electric shockwaves, or they could have the dragon fly alongside the racers to occasionally shoot them with lightning. The second option would be much more chaotic, but it would be an incredibly unique set piece for a track. I think Ruined Kingdom has so much untapped potential in the Mario franchise, so even if it's not the most iconic kingdom from the game, it's the one that I want to see return in some way the most. Whether it be as a Mario Kart track or a reappearance in a mainline game, I would be happy to see Crumbledon finally get the love it deserves. So that's why Ruined Kingdom is my pick for my most wanted kingdom in Mario Kart World. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you love the picture match sub area and hate me for not considering it as a track? Let me know in the comments. I had a lot of fun coming up with ideas for this video. I know it's pretty different from my normal content, but I hope you all enjoyed this as well. I also really hope we can actually get Mario Kart World DLC, but it feels like I'm gonna be an old man before that happens. We still need Larry for Mario Kart. Anyway, before I go, I've got to thank my members being Kumoyose, Harvey Corbett, Mr. G, Anis118, RKJD3930, Patrick Gast, Expired Crazy Person, Maidsy02, JJW Gamerboy, The Shin Smash, Nuclear, Doodle Dog 222, Aaron0729, The Cool Man, Lapox14, Megalomari, Danny Gaming Central, Lucy V, Uwu, The Silent 123, Windows Vista's fan-made content, Genie VV Yoso, Wyatt Derpy, Leonard Von Hevering, Starfly, Disco Fama, Cassie Channel, Drop D Mike 75, Virtual Tomato, Daniel Castillo 1262, Anton 3669, Smuggy, Guy 112, Young Smoky VP7, Zach Pro, Flame 765, Peanut Brown of Gallery, Gorposaurus, BFDI Macaron, Stephen Hafner, Night Vision 101, PDX, Wilbur, Mogo Mogo Boat, Stuffy Ant, Rich229, Jeho Jim, Magnus and Larslot, Trifector, Tibby, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Blessed Tiger, Yanni the Duck, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Display Changer, B Major 2003, Sir Musty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Thicky Reiki, Ungenio TM, Tesseract, JubeTube, Jameson Pageson, Zfrost Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.